Joran tapped the recalibration switch on his freighter's navigation console for what felt like the 100th time, muttering a string of complaints that would have earned him a lifetime ban from his grandmother's kitchen. The holographic star maps flickered like confused slot machines, each insisting on a different interpretation of where exactly he was supposed to be in this neglected corner of the galaxy. "Come on, Lyra," he said, addressing the ship's AI with all the patience of a man who had already lost too many arguments today. Lyra was an ancient system, temperamental as an old pet, named after the star cluster she'd once been programmed to chart. Kepler Outpost should be a straight line through the crystal drift, not this labyrinth of shiny nonsense. The AI's voice crackled through speakers that had probably been retired from military service centuries ago. "Pilot Joran, my sensors indicate multiple crystalline anomalies ahead. I suggest diverting course toward the largest structure for potential docking." "Diverting course." "Investigating," Joran repeated, scrubbing a hand down his face. His uniform, a rumpled delivery jumpsuit marked with the fading crest of Stellar Relay Express, sported stains that deserved their own archaeological dig. "I'm a courier, Lyra, not an explorer. I deliver cargo. From point A to point B, hopefully without being vaporized, hijacked, or, stars forbid, forced to socialize." Through his viewport, the anomaly sharpened into a field of monumental crystal spires. They rose like frozen lightning bolts, jagged and translucent, refracting starlight into patterns that seemed too intentional to be natural. At their center floated a vast cathedral-like structure, its walls pulsing with a rhythm that suggested a heartbeat older than civilizations. Joran leaned forward despite himself. Well, somebody's got a flair for architecture. His cargo, stacked in the hold, was embarrassingly ordinary: 3 crates of synthetic coffee concentrate, 2 boxes of hydroponic filter replacements, and 1 fragile parcel labeled Antique Cookbook, Earth Origins. Nothing worth dying for. And certainly nothing worth tangling with whatever alien symphony was currently broadcasting across his proximity sensors. "Lyra, please tell me that is not what it looks like." "If you believe it resembles a massive alien construction broadcasting ceremonial harmonics across multiple frequencies," Lyra replied coolly, "then yes. That is what it looks like." Joran sighed, the kind of weary exhale reserved for men who realized fate had terrible timing. He'd signed up for a simple milk run, something dull enough to pay bills but boring enough to guarantee survival. Instead, here he was, staring at what appeared to be an alien space cathedral blasting wedding music. "Any sign of weapons?" he asked, though his ship's defenses consisted of 1 half-functional shield and a prayer.
"Negative. However, the structure includes a docking bay compatible with standard freighter class." Against his better judgment, Joran angled the freighter toward the crystalline behemoth. Maybe it was a tourist hub, he thought. Maybe they had restrooms, decent coffee, and, if the stars aligned, directions. Famous last words, he muttered as tractor beams, gentle but inescapable, guided his patched-up vessel into a berth that looked designed for ships with far sleeker reputations. The docking seals engaged with a dignified hiss. Joran checked his reflection in the hatchway mirror and immediately wished he hadn't. His dark hair looked like it had declared independence from gravity hours ago, and his uniform's coffee stains had matured into whole civilizations. "Well, Lyra," he said, "if I don't come back, tell my creditors I died nobly." "I'll draft the poetry," Lyra replied dryly. The hatch opened, revealing a corridor straight out of a legend. The walls were carved from single, immense crystals that glowed softly from within, warm under Joran's fingertips when he brushed them. His boots echoed faintly on a polished floor that curved toward distant music. "Okay," Joran whispered to himself. "Definitely not a truck stop." The corridor widened into a hall that defied imagination. Vaulted walls of crystal spiraled into patterns that shifted when seen from the corner of his eye. Rows of beings sat in concentric circles facing a central dais. Their robes shimmered like liquid starlight, headdresses catching the light from floating orbs that drifted lazily overhead. At the altar, Two figures stood hand in hand. Voices sang in harmonic mathematics, weaving light itself into shapes that danced across the walls. Joran froze. Oh no. No, no, no. It was a wedding. And he was standing in the back wearing a stained courier's jumpsuit. He tried to shuffle along the wall, aiming for inconspicuous. Instead, he ended up beside a group of guests whose ethereal beauty made him feel like a badly assembled prototype. Their luminous eyes regarded him with vague curiosity, as though he were an odd insect who'd wandered in. The ceremony continued, crystalline objects exchanged, glowing with visible love as they changed hands. The harmonics resonated deep in Joran's bones, so powerful he nearly forgot to breathe. Against his better instincts, he mimicked the postures of the guests around him, straightening his spine and folding his hands. That illusion collapsed the moment his stomach growled like a starship engine on low fuel. Heads turned. He gave an apologetic shrug. Skipped lunch. And then, catastrophe. The couple at the altar lifted their joined hands, and every guest rose, releasing a symphony of resonant sound. Joran panicked. He stood. He opened his mouth. What came out was a strangled attempt at harmony. And the cathedral responded.
His clumsy note rippled through the crystalline walls, amplified, transformed, woven seamlessly into the greater song. Light flared from his position, cascading outward like waves on a cosmic shore. The congregation turned to him, expressions ranging from surprise to approval. Several nodded as though he'd just passed an exam he hadn't studied for. Well, Joran muttered under his breath, glowing faintly. That's new. The vows ended in a burst of light that released crystalline butterflies into the vaulted chamber. The seating dissolved into the floor, revealing a reception hall complete with floating refreshment stations and a gravity-defying dance floor. Joran exhaled in relief. Reception. I can handle a reception. Food, drinks, awkward small talk, universal constants. He wandered toward what looked like a buffet, though the food challenged his definition of the term. Platters bore luminous wafers, liquid orbs floated like tame comets, and sauces dripped in elegant rhythms. When in doubt, he told himself, go for the crackers. The wafer he picked up promptly played a melody. Guests smiled approvingly, mistaking his desperate improvisation for sophistication. He was just summoning the courage to sip from one of the floating liquid spheres when a voice, smooth, melodic, dangerous, slid across his nerves like a blade wrapped in velvet. First time at a celestial binding? Joran turned. And nearly forgot how to stand. The woman before him was radiant, her skin pale as moonlight, her long hair a deep red that caught fire in the crystal glow. Elven ears framed her features, sharp and elegant, while her smile carried an edge both inviting and perilous. Joran managed. First time at, pretty much anything. Her laughter rang like distant bells, sweet and unnerving. She extended a graceful hand. I am Elara. Joran shook her hand, marveling at the cool silk of her skin over the steel strength beneath. Joran. And I should probably admit. I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, good, Elara said, her eyes gleaming with predatory amusement. I was worried you might be boring. Joran had faced his share of awkward delivery scenarios, getting stuck in customs on Droska 4, accidentally waking a hibernating beast in a warehouse on Orvalis, even tripping over a client ceremonial rug in the middle of a contract signing. But none of those compared to standing in a cosmic cathedral while an otherworldly woman with flame-red hair and ears that tapered elegantly toward the sky looked at him like he was the most interesting thing in the room. Elara's eyes sparkled in the refracted glow of the crystal walls. They were the sort of eyes that made you wonder what they had already seen: wars, stars collapsing, lovers begging for just one more night. You improvised rather well, she said, tilting her head slightly, a predator appraising new territory. The resonance you produced, unexpected, but harmonious. The collective noticed. Yeah, Joran said, his voice cracking in a way that destroyed any illusion of cool he might have had. That was definitely intentional. Totally planned. Her lips curved, sharp and knowing. You're either very brave, or very foolish. Mostly foolish. Professionally foolish, in fact. I'm a courier. My greatest skill is not dying between point A and point B. That's a skill worth cultivating, Elara replied. She lifted one of the floating liquid spheres from the refreshment spread, and it immediately shifted to a shade of shimmering rose in her palm. She held it toward him. Try this. Joran eyed it suspiciously. It's not going to turn me into a butterfly or rewrite my DNA, is it? Her laugh chimed softly. Only if that is your deepest desire. For most, it tastes like comfort. Hesitant, he took the orb and let it dissolve against his lips. His eyes widened as flavor exploded across his senses, warm, sweet, with the faint tartness of apples and the buttery crumble of pastry. He blinked. That's my grandmother's apple pie. Down to the crust she always burned. Precisely, Elara said, sipping from her own sphere, which glowed a deep crimson. The harmonics of memory, distilled into flavor. That's equal parts amazing and terrifying, Joran muttered. Most worthwhile things are. She regarded him with a patience that was somehow more intense than scrutiny, as if she were listening not just to his words, but to the energy beneath them. The ceremony you witnessed was no ordinary union. Two great houses have joined, the Crystalline Collective and the Void Dancers. Their politics span centuries, their alliances ripple across dimensions. Centuries? Joran repeated. As in, the length of time it takes me to pay off my ship repairs? Elara's expression softened, though her smile never quite lost its sharpness. Longer, for those who measure time by the slow growth of crystal or the eternal flow of the void. Joran shifted uncomfortably. And I just wandered in wearing stained cargo pants. That's definitely not in the Stellar Relay Handbook. You contributed, Elara corrected. The resonance you offered was accepted, even amplified. The matrix itself responded. She leaned closer, her voice lowering so only he could hear. That is not something that happens often. Joran swallowed, suddenly aware of how close she stood. The scent of her hair was like winter fire, sharp and clean. So, not getting vaporized is good news, right? For now, she said. Around them, the reception swelled into new rhythms. Guests mingled, their forms shifting subtly, some dissolving briefly into geometry before reforming, others floating with effortless grace above the crystalline floor. It was socializing, yes, but in ways Joran's human brain struggled to catalogue. I should probably, sneak out before I accidentally step on someone's diplomatic toes, Joran said. Elara's smile widened. You would be missed. He barked a short laugh. Missed? I'm nobody. Just a guy with 3 crates of synthetic coffee beans waiting in his cargo hold. Her gaze flickered. Coffee? Yeah. Fake stuff. Premium blend, allegedly. Why? Elara's sharp teeth glinted in the crystal light when she smiled. My people have a fondness for stimulants. Substances that bend perception create fascinating harmonics. So you're saying my cargo is suddenly valuable? I'm saying, she replied smoothly, that I would enjoy a taste. Before Joran could respond, the music shifted. The lights above dimmed, replaced by pulses that throbbed like a heartbeat. Guests began drifting upward, bodies twining through the air in slow spirals. The cathedral itself seemed to hum in anticipation. Joran's stomach dropped. Oh no. That's dancing, isn't it? Elara extended her hand, elegant and unyielding. You catch on quickly. He stared at her hand like it was a trigger to a self-destruct sequence. Just to clarify. By dance, you mean the kind with feet on the ground? Maybe a little shuffling, some elbow wiggles? Her laugh was low, dangerous, musical. No, courier. Not that kind. All around, couples floated upward, moving as though gravity were an optional suggestion. Their motions carved radiant patterns through the crystalline air, music and motion blending into something larger than both. Joran backed up a step. Listen, my dance resume consists of 2 middle school formals and 1 regrettable karaoke night on Vega Station. Add in zero gravity and I become a collision hazard. Trust me, Elara murmured, and something in her tone made him want to. Before he could invent another excuse, her hand closed around his, and the ground fell away. His heart lurched. His stomach performed somersaults. The cathedral spun around him as they lifted smoothly into the air. This is how I die, he gasped. Death by interpretive space ballet. You're not going to die. Her voice brushed against his ear, steadying him as much as her grip. Breathe. He did, and something shifted. Terror gave way to wonder. The motion became less like falling and more like flying in a dream he didn't want to wake from. Okay, he admitted. This is, actually incredible. Still terrifying. But incredible. Elara's smile was approving, but also unreadable. Good. Now, follow my lead. The dance tells a story. Creation, growth, union, transformation. And what part are we doing now? She spun him gently, crystal light blurring around them. Her red hair flared like a comet's tail. The meeting of 2 unlikely souls. Joran's breath caught as Elara guided him through the slow spiral. The crystalline air shimmered with harmonic currents, each note of the music rippling into light. Around them, other couples drifted upward in arcs of fluid geometry, bodies weaving through space like brushstrokes on a living canvas. He was painfully aware of 2 things. 1, he had absolutely no idea what he was doing, and 2, Elara made it seem as though he did. Her strength was hidden beneath her elegance, every movement precise, every adjustment seamless. She carried him as much as she danced with him, and yet it didn't feel humiliating. It felt like harmony. You're stronger than you look, Joran managed, though his voice wobbled as she lifted him effortlessly through a turn. Elara's lips curved. My people adapt to hostile environments. Strength is survival. Grace is necessity. Grace, sure, Joran muttered. I'm more of a graceless survival kind of guy. Her laugh sent a ripple of silver light through the air, as if even the cathedral itself approved. She leaned closer, her crimson hair brushing against his cheek as they dipped and rose again. Your energy signature betrays you. You pretend calm, but your resonance trembles. Joran's pulse quickened. In my defense, I'm 20 feet off the ground in the arms of a woman who could probably bench press my spaceship. A little nervous trembling seems appropriate. Appropriate, she echoed, drawing him into a spin that aligned their bodies closer than he expected. He felt the coolness of her skin even through the thin fabric of his jumpsuit. It wasn't the cold of absence, but of clarity, like winter air under starlight. The music shifted, slowing, deepening. Couples tightened their formations, drifting closer together as their movements began to synchronize. The cathedral pulsed with each collective motion, crystalline walls refracting light in vast mandalas. This part, Elara whispered, guiding him into a sweep that pulled them through the glowing patterns, is intimacy. Not of bodies, but of frequencies. Joran tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. He could feel it. The resonance between them, the way her energy pressed against his, vibrating in tandem, feeding into the crystal lattice itself. He'd never experienced anything like it. It was terrifying. It was intoxicating. Her eyes glowed faintly, a quiet luminescence in dark water. Most humans emit predictable patterns, simple, rhythmic. Yours is unusual. Complex. Nourishing. Nourishing, Joran repeated, hesitant. Should I be worried about that word? Not in the way you imagine. She tightened her grip, and the cathedral erupted in light as their combined movement triggered another cascade. My people draw sustenance from resonance, from harmony itself. We do not drain. We share. Joran swallowed. That's oddly comforting. Good. She tilted her head, the dangerous smile returning. Because right now, you are feeding me very well. He decided not to ask follow-up questions. Below them, the newly joined couple at the altar began their final ascent, rising in radiant unity. Their forms glowed so brightly that Joran had to squint, though the beauty of it still stabbed straight into his chest. Light spilled between them like rivers of color, weaving into the cathedral's geometry until every surface burned with patterns of love made visible. This, Elara murmured, her lips near his ear, is the true binding. Two frequencies merging. Two souls becoming one. And then it happened. Every couple in the air became part of a single design, their motions aligning into a vast, pulsing tapestry of light and sound. Joran felt the resonance slam into him like a tidal wave. For a fleeting instant, he wasn't just himself. He was part of everything, Elara's hand in his, the cathedral's breath, the endless stars beyond. It was overwhelming. It was impossible. And it was the most alive he had ever felt. When the light finally dimmed, leaving only shimmering afterglow, Joran realized he was still clinging to Elara, chest heaving. She, by contrast, looked merely pleased. Wow, he breathed. Indeed, she replied softly. Her expression had shifted, less predatory now, more thoughtful, almost vulnerable. The reception resumed below as if nothing miraculous had just happened. Guests reformed at the buffet, laughter chiming like crystal bells, while others slipped away through glowing doors that appeared and vanished at will. Joran, however, felt hollowed out and filled at the same time, a contradiction he couldn't put into words. He glanced at Elara. So. This is where I say thank you for keeping me from embarrassing myself too badly, and then quietly sneak back to my ship before I commit interstellar treason? Her red hair swirled as she tilted her head. Perhaps. Or perhaps this is where you consider that you don't belong to your old life as neatly as you thought. That's a pretty heavy suggestion to drop on a delivery guy with coffee beans in his cargo hold. Her lips curved into a half-smile. You underestimate yourself. Tonight, you harmonized with an ancient matrix and matched step with me. Few have done either. Fewer still both. I'm just, he hesitated. Saying just a courier suddenly felt false. He didn't feel like just anything anymore. Elara drifted closer, close enough that he could see faint silver veins glowing under her pale skin. Your path is not as fixed as you believe, Joran. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say she was wrong, that his path was nothing more than late deliveries and unpaid docking fees. But the pendant of light still clung to his chest from their shared resonance, and the memory of flying at her side whispered otherwise. Before he could speak, the music below signaled the reception's final act. The binding couple descended, radiant and whole, as the cathedral's crystal formations shifted back toward rest. Guests prepared their departures in manners that defied physics, folding space, dissolving into light, stepping through doors made of nothing. Joran rubbed the back of his neck. Guess this is my cue to leave before someone realizes I didn't RSVP. Elara's eyes lingered on him. Yes. But not without a choice. The cathedral's glow softened into twilight hues, the great crystalline spires dimming as though sighing after the weight of the ceremony. Guests shimmered out of existence in elegant waves, some dissolving into starlight, others stepping into doorways that blinked like living eyes. The air smelled faintly of ozone and blossoms Joran couldn't name. He walked beside Elara toward the docking bays, trying not to notice how her presence made the whole corridor feel narrower. She moved with unhurried grace, each step a deliberate symphony. Joran's boots, by comparison, scuffed and squeaked, reminding him of just how much he didn't belong here. His freighter waited ahead, looking like a rusted tin can that had somehow snuck into a line of luxury star yachts. Its patched hull and dented thrusters sagged in embarrassment beside the sleek vessels of other guests. Joran winced. Yep. That's my ship. Try not to laugh. I would never laugh at survival, Elara said. And yet her lips twitched as though she might. Survival, sure. Dignity, debatable. Joran rubbed the back of his neck. So this is the part where I thank you for not letting me plummet face first during the whole aerial dance thing, and then we both walk away pretending this was a weird dream, right? But Elara didn't nod, or smile, or offer some cryptic farewell. Instead, she reached into the folds of her flowing attire and withdrew a pendant. It gleamed with a light of its own, a tiny crystal orb swirling with miniature galaxies, as though the whole cosmos had been bottled inside. She pressed it into his palm. This, she said, is a harmonic beacon. If ever you wish to find me again, it will guide you. Joran stared at the pendant. It was warm, alive almost, pulsing faintly against his skin. He looked back at her, trying to laugh. That's either the most romantic gesture I've ever seen, or a tracking device. Both, Elara said, without hesitation. My people prefer honesty. Joran blinked. Right. No pressure, then. You think of yourself as ordinary, she continued, her eyes steady, a courier drifting between outposts. But tonight you resonated with the Matrix, danced with me, and lived to tell it. That is no ordinary path. Joran opened his mouth, shut it again, then tried a weak grin. I'm still just the guy delivering fake coffee beans. Her smile sharpened. And yet you made me curious. That is rare. He swallowed, trying to ignore how fast his heart was beating. So, if I ever decide courier life isn't enough, I just use this? He lifted the pendant slightly. Elara leaned in, close enough that her red hair brushed his cheek, close enough that he caught the faint scent of cold air and lightning. If you're ready for something more, she whispered, use it. Before Joran could answer, his comm unit chimed, a grating, mundane sound that felt insulting in the grandeur of the cathedral. Lyra's voice followed, cool as ever. Pilot, Stellar Relay Express is inquiring why your delivery schedule is now catastrophically behind. Shall I inform them you were detained by interdimensional matrimony? Joran groaned. Reality calls. Elara stepped back, her expression unreadable now, though her eyes lingered as if memorizing him. Keep it safe, she said, nodding toward the pendant. Then, with that same predatory grace, she turned and slipped into the cathedral's shadows, gone before he could think of a reason to stop her. Joran looked down at the beacon in his palm. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if mocking the idea that his life would ever be simple again. Might as well face it, he muttered, tucking the crystal into his jacket. I'm doomed. He climbed into his freighter, settling into the pilot's chair with a sigh. The ship felt smaller now, somehow, more fragile after what he'd just seen. Lyra's interface flickered. You survived, the AI observed dryly. Congratulations. Shall I plot a course back to Kepler Outpost? Yeah, Joran said. Back to the grind. Deliver the beans, dodge the creditors, pretend I didn't just accidentally crash an alien wedding. As the ship disengaged from the cathedral's berth, he risked one last glance through the viewport. The crystalline spires floated serenely, fading into the distance as stars swallowed them. The beacon pulsed against his chest. He smiled despite himself. Lyra, he said, remind me to update my resume when we get back. Courier pilot, interdimensional wedding guest, and apparently, dance partner to a woman who can bend gravity. Shall I list that under transferable skills? Lyra asked. Yeah. Put it right under not dying. The freighter accelerated into the starfield, carrying him back to the ordinary jobs that paid his fuel and filled his stomach. But Joran knew, ordinary was over. Somewhere out there, Elara's laughter still echoed, and the beacon in his jacket whispered promises of paths untraveled. And for the first time in years, he found himself eager to see where those paths might lead. And that's where Joran's story pauses, leaving him with a ship full of coffee beans, an AI that won't stop criticizing him, and a pendant that hums with possibility. He came looking for nothing more than a boring delivery, and instead stumbled into a cathedral of living crystal, a wedding that merged civilizations, and a dance with someone who might just change his future forever. But isn't that the way with life? One moment you're complaining about navigation charts, and the next, the universe drops a choice in your lap. Do you keep flying the same old routes, or do you follow the resonance into something entirely unknown? Joran doesn't know the answer yet, but we can be sure the beacon won't stay silent forever. If you enjoyed this cosmic misadventure, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens when Joran decides to push his luck again. Drop a like if you laughed at his awkward dancing as much as I did, and share this story with a friend who needs a reminder that sometimes the universe has bigger plans than your to-do list. Thanks for joining me among the stars. I'll see you in the next story.